Hello, I hope everything is working in terms of this. So we are now back, and we've got Leonid. I'm probably going to butcher your name in relation to that, and Anastasiia.
It's it's Leonid.
Isn't able to do this because she's stuck in a meeting, so it's just Leon. I'm going to shorten it down for my sanity and not pronounce it wrong. Talking about the evolution of the Lex Olympica and the emergence of esports regulation. So this is going to be a very law-heavy one. I'm looking forward to it, Leon. So I'm going to pass it over to you now, and I wish you luck with your presentation, and I'll be back to ask you any questions later on. Good luck.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Do you hear me? I hope you can hear me. I'm going to be speaking alone. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a presentation that me and Anastasiia have prepared together, but unfortunately she's stuck in a meeting, and therefore she cannot make it, and I'll be presenting it alone. We're going to speak about the evolution of the Lex Olympica and the emergence of esports regulation. Even though it was announced a little bit law heavy, I'm going to make it a little bit less law heavy. We're just going to speak about the intersection of how traditional sports law and the rapidly evolving world of competitive gaming are merging or not merging in that case. As I said, it's a joint work with my colleague Anastasiia Dulska, and we'll see how the Olympic movement is adapting to the different steps of esports, how esports is getting integrated into the Olympic Charter or not, and what structure changes are necessary to make it work. So let's dive in. The first question that we have, or I would like to present to you, is what Lex Olympica is. The Lex Olympica is actually the backbone of the Olympic movement since the new Olympic Games in 1894. Since they were derived from the antique. It's not a static framework, and it has continuously evolved to address new challenges and to address in the past. If you remember, the Olympics were strict amateurish, but now they've started more and more accepting professional athletes. So this was a major shift in the Olympic Games, and the establishment of WADA in 1999, the World Anti-Doping Agency, was another eye-opening moment because then the Olympic movement took doping and so on seriously on. So we have now regulations, what is doping, what is not, which is really, really interesting, and which is also having an effect on esports, as we will discuss a little bit later. And this is what our study is actually about. The progressive movement toward gender equality and athlete warfare, not warfare, sorry, welfare. And now, again, with esports, where we're facing an unprecedented challenge, like how to integrate esports into the Olympic movement, and questions whether it's sport, how to define athletes, e-athletes, and whether the framework that we have under the Olympic movement is able to accommodate the digital competition. All of you have, if you follow, have read that the IOC, together with the Esports World Championship Foundation, have taken on exploring how to include esports, be it as a physical / digital sport, like they did in Singapore, showcasing like table tennis and so on and so forth, or whether it's like real esports games that are played on a competitive level. So then let me just briefly introduce you to Lex Olympica. It's basically, yes, it's a little bit low heavy, I have to admit. It's the comprehensive body of legal forms, norms, principles, and regulations governing the Olympic movement. Well, essentially, it's the framework for Olympic sports. It's not just the sports that are themselves, it's also the National Olympic Committees, the International Sports Federation, and athlete conduct globally. So Lex Olympica is defined by four core principles. And that's the main framework. It's fair play and sportsmanship, to have a honest competition, not to cheat, not to take drugs, and respect for the rules. The non-discrimination, so access regardless of race, gender, religion, or political beliefs. Athlete welfare protection, protecting like health, safety, and the rights of the athletes, and the autonomy of sport, like independence from any political statements and commercial interference, even though we're seeing it a little bit going through with the Olympic framework at the time being. And then we have the enforcement of these mechanisms. On the other hand, um, the Constitution is the Olympic Charter, but then we have the Court of Arbitration for Sports, which was established in the 90s and which is a huge success, which defined what sports law is. We have a lot of cases in football, in other sports. So this is a really, really important thing. And we're going to look at it also from an esports angle. And then we have the WADA, the code, which is defining what drugs are, what doping is, and we have the WADA, the organization, and the International Testing Agency as oversights. So what was built since the 90s is a sophisticated legal system that has developed more and more, and where we have like case law and things that define what Lex Olympica really is. We don't have it for esports. So it's like Lex Olympica showed already in the past that it's able to adapt. Um, each Olympic ideal centered on amateurism was shifted to professionalism. And by the end of the 20th century, professional athletes were welcomed and they changed how the Olympic Games were perceived. And then anti-doping, of course. After the establishment of WADA, it got a really, really big integrity jump within the Lex Olympica. So everybody could know that if you dope, you can be excluded. And we have the examples of the Russian athletes after the Sochi Games and the long arbitrations at the CAS, ruling on who or how can participate after doping. And then we have a major jump in gender equality, even though there are still issues on trans athletes and how to treat them. But this is also something where we have a framework where the Lex Olympica can adapt and will adapt eventually. And the athletes' rights. So they have fair compensation. They're mostly protected from abuse. There are things in place that can protect them, like sports tribunals and national committees that try to avoid such things. Now we're shifting to esports. Esports, as you all know, has experienced an explosive growth. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry by now, and we're all over the world, like we see with this conference. Like everyone is there, everyone is watching, millions of viewers worldwide. League of Legends tournaments are filling stadiums like Taylor Swift or like NFL games. So it's there and it will stay. It's not a hobby anymore. It's not a LAN party that you did in the 90s with your friends. It's huge. And the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, they have acknowledged it and they have already experimented with the Olympic Virtual Series and the Olympic Esports Week, and they're testing the waters for broader inclusion. It's happening. I mean, there are several problems which are in the background, but that esports in the Olympics cannot be avoided, be it in the form of part of the Olympics or esports Olympic Games. In our opinion, it's going to happen. However, we have some challenges to traditional sports. Esports, it's different from traditional sports. We have a very fragmented regulation, whether in sports, you have the WADA, you have the Olympic movement. Every federation is like the FIFA or the ITTF. They have their charter. Everything is centralized. There is a governing body. Esports doesn't have it. Traditional sports, like they go to FIFA, the IOC, with a clear authority. And there is in esports, we have the International Esports Federation, but for each and every esports site, we don't have a federation. We have game-specific rules, which are under publisher control. It's not like I always like to say traditional sports is open source, but esports is proprietary because you have the publisher in the background who's doing the rules. And they own the rules, they own the IP. They own the tournament organization, or whether you can organize a tournament at all. And this creates conflicts of interest that you don't have in traditional sports. You can go out and play football on the field, but on the pitch. But for an esports site, you have to buy the license to play the game. So it's very different. And player rights. Many esports athletes are teenagers and they sign contracts without legal protection. They don't know. They don't know. They are hype. They want to do their thing and they don't get legal support. So unionization is also happening, a very limited thing. And then there is digital fair play. There is like a new category of integrity, so to say. Cheating, software hacking, game modifications, hardware modifications, aimbots, medicine. Like what about cognitive enhancers? If somebody takes Xanax or Ritalin or anything else, like is it doping? How do we define it? WADA doesn't have codes for that, even though the International Esports Federation implements the WADA code. In my opinion, or in our opinion, it's still not very fitting. So these are minor differences. It's a different structure. And then the next question is, do the core Olympic values translate to esports? Well, it's complicated. Fair play is very murky because the rules themselves are proprietary. Who defines what is fair? Independent regulator or the companies that are making the game? Cheating needs technical, like Valve's anti-cheat software. They need technical software that can prevent cheating. And there is the Esports Integrity Commission as a governance body, but it's also voluntary for the publisher or for the tournament organizer to sign up to it. So we don't have it written in stone. Discrimination, facing a lot real challenges in esports. It struggles, the industry struggles with gender disparity. Female gamers face harassment and unequal opportunities. And the decentralized nature of esports, like we have it without a framework around it, makes it very difficult to enforce it. We do not have physical achievements. Esports is cognitive, strategic, technical. Yes, of course, you need to be fit, and it's changing now. All the esports players are fit. But what is excellence? How do we define it? How can we transfer it from the traditional sports to esports? And this philosophical question has very many practical implications. And the athlete welfare with mental health challenges, injuries in their hands and the eye strains and burnout. There is no protection in esports. The values could apply, but they need new thinking and adaptation. And this brings us to a fundamental question. Is esports a legitimate sport? Well, the case for legitimacy is strong. It's genuinely competitive with clear winners and losers. We need serious skills, hand-eye coordination, strategic thinking, and thousands of hours of practice. It has organizational structures that try to mirror and starting to mirror traditional sports, professional leagues, teams, competitions, and it has a cultural and economic impact. So there is a massive audience, there is substantial revenue, and there is mainstream media coverage. And many countries already have a legal status for esports as traditional sports, including special visas and work permits. But there is a big counter party which is arguing that without physicality, it's not truly sports. It's competitive entertainment, and it's different from the Olympics. And recognizing esports as sports would have real consequences for regulation, funding, and Olympic inclusion. So here are some arguments for the integration. Proponents say that there is a unified legal framework that would provide clarity and consistency. Instead of different rule systems, everyone would be operating under the same principles. It would have enhanced player protections, standardized contracts, health and safety protocols, proper dispute resolution mechanisms through established channels like CAS, but no, we have the International Games and Esports Tribunal, which is taking over and is more fitting for those standards. We have arbitrators who know how to decide such kind of disputes. The global harmonization would simplify international competition. Currently, we have cross-border issues which are legally a nightmare. Different countries, different rules, different standards, different visas, different work permits. And finally, the integration would legitimize esports in the eyes of traditionalists. Olympic inclusion is the gold standard for sports recognition. So we think that this might work. However, there are also arguments against integrations which are equally compelling. The proprietary nature of esports is fundamentally incompatible with Olympic autonomy principles. Game publishers control everything. How can the IOC maintain independence when it doesn't even control the rules of the game being played? What happens if a publisher decides to discontinue a game or radically change it mid-Olympic cycle? Just turn off the servers. Lack of physicality, this is the main argument of the proponents. Challenges are a century of Olympic philosophy. The games celebrate physical human achievement. Esports is demanding, but it's cognitive. It's not better or worse, it's different. Perhaps different enough to warrant a separate treatment to have an esports Olympic. Commercial entanglement is deep. Traditional sports have commercialization, it's true, but it's regulated. In esports, commercial interests are backed into the DNA of every game. The sales, the in-game purchases, the loot boxes, the publisher profits, all directly tied to the competitive play. This creates conflict in the Olympic movement, which is difficult to handle. And these are not practical obstacles. They're fundamental incompatibilities that might be insurmountable. So let me just show you this slide, which has the contrast, like public versus IP, physical versus cognitive, independent versus corporate control, stable frameworks versus rapid evolution. So what we have now is what I like to call the Wild West governance. No centralized authority, patchwork of rules, multiple organizations claim authority, the International Esports Federation, the Global Esports Federation, ESIC for like the WADA for integrity, which makes sense. We do not have anything else save the ESIC in the esports realm. So this might be the one which is having authority, but ISF and GF, who's responsible? But not have comprehensive power. Their influence is limited because they have to be privately signed up. The jurisdiction is always changing, and major publishers still operate independently. The situation is further complicated by financial interests. The Saudi Arabian Investment Fund, for example, has massive investments in esports infrastructure and events. And we have controversies like Blitzschung that was banned after making a political statement during a tournament regards Hong Kong. We have the StarCraft match fixing scandal in the past. We have the Two versus Face Clan contract dispute. We have the iBuyPower gambling scandal in the past. There is a lot happening in esports. So we have legal and ethical dilemmas. IP problems, questions that are unique to esports, who owns virtual items, what rights players have to stream, gameplay? Can publishers adopt tournaments, player welfare concerns, digital doping, like substances, cheating, and so on and so forth, and competition integrity, so on, which makes it very difficult. So what we try to see is what are the future prospects for esports, and there are two paths that we see. Integration with the Lex Olympica. This means bringing esports under the Olympic umbrella. Benefits include establishing mechanism, unified standards, and Olympic legitimacy, but requires significant adaptation. The Olympic Charter would need a revision, new principles for digital competition, and accommodation of proprietary content. And then the question whether the Olympic movement is willing to change fundamentally. And the second path is a separate regulatory framework. Alternatively, develop esports law as its own discipline, allow tailored regulation addressing specific esport challenges, IP, digital competition, rapid evolution, innovation, without fighting against the Olympics, but being part of it as a different sports, as esports. And either path has profound implication. Integration redefines what the Olympics represent. Separation creates an entirely new area of sports law, but both need stakeholder commitment and significant resources. So the conclusion is more or less that the future's esports is uncertain at the moment. We have fragmented governments that are clearly inadequate for the esports we're having, the professionalism, yet no consensus on the solution. And the differences between traditional sports and esports will make it difficult in the next few years to shape competitive entertainment for generation. So getting it right now, not just for esports or the Olympic, but how to understand competition, achievement, and governments is key in the digital age. And thank you. So open for questions now.
Thank you very much, Leon. I'm going to shorten it down again to Leon. So thank you. It was really interesting.
Sure.
There's a few questions that I have, and there's a few questions that other people have. So I'm going to there's two questions I'm going to round it up on so we can get on to the next talk. But the first one was by Toby. Tobias Schultz. Interesting presentation, especially the challenges concerning the values. What I am wondering to make it accessible to anyone, so we talked about that in terms of the Olympic movement and making it accessible to anyone, would this require from the publishers like Riot to put servers into regions that they have not yet a dedicated server? For example, the one that I'm going to give in relation to this is Central Africa.
You mean organization-wise? So yes, probably we would need to have for the regulations committees that are based everywhere, not necessarily servers, but we would need a governance body that would be responsible for the esports in each and every region. We're having it. It's coming up. Almost everyone is signed up for the International Esports Federation, and there are a lot of national esports federations. The question is whether we need a federation for each and every title. Like, let's say we need a Counter-Strike federation, which is only administering the rules on a national and international level for esports, shifting it away from the publisher. This would probably make it more professionalized and more independent of the publisher. I hope this answers your question.
I hope so too. I'm sure Toby will tell me if not. And then the second one was there's two things in relation to this. You mentioned the iBuyPower scandal, which is something that I talk about a lot with my lectures in terms of governance and democracy. But you said that it has an impact in terms of legitimacy within the Olympiad movement. But football, which is or soccer, depending on our American audience as well, has had many gambling-related scandals. The Al League example was the one that brings to mind the most. Serie A is a fully professional league. Do you think that really has too much of an impact, considering that I think every traditional sport at this stage has had a gambling-related issue one time or another?
Sure, we're having the scandals in traditional sports as well. Speaking of Häuser in the German Bundesliga and others, but I believe that in esports, because it's a nascent movement, it's in the grassroots, it has a bigger impact um, on its integrity. And everyone knows the 322 meme. And if you start digging deep into the rabbit hole, you will find that the match fixing is a really huge issue in the lower leagues that are flying under the radar. Um, Basically, every match is match fixed, or every second match is match fixed. So this makes it completely difficult to sell something to the bigger audience where you have a grassroots problem, which is based on the quick buck, so to say. You're doing it because you want to earn money fast, but you're not doing it because you want to become a professional. And sports grew out of this because we have the WADA, um, we have the criminal law. It's also a question in criminal law whether it covers esports match fixing or not. So it's a lot of problems that have to be covered, and where we would need regulation to get out of the Wild West.
Perfect. Really good answer there. Last question was from Nogus Esports, where he just asked where could he find this paper when it's published.
Um, it will be published either in the International Journal for Sports Law, and we're currently finalizing it, or it will be published in an edited book on esports, which is going to be published in September or October 2026. It depends on whether it will be becoming too long for an article and be rather a chapter for the book. But if interested, just Google it. The title, it's not a working title, it's a final title.
Thank you very much, Leon.